Welcome to Young Asia Television.
Presented by the National Science Foundation of Sri Lanka.
Hi and welcome to Mihimadala. How much do you know about pests or getting rid of them? Well, on today's show, we'll be taking a look at the role of pesticides in agriculture.
Danuwat viya yutte vidyaven terum gena lokaya jeevat viya yutte Mihimada.
Agriculture or farming, believed to have been invented as early as in 5500 BC by the Sumerians, involves large-scale intensive cultivation of land, monocropping, organized irrigation, and use of a specialized labor force. Human beings passed through many evolutionary stages before they started farming. Once people started farming, they tried to increase and protect their harvests in various ways. To protect their harvests from wild beasts and birds, they devoted a part of their harvests to them, while margosa seeds and marigold petals were used to ward off insects. But these methods alone were ineffective in producing a harvest big enough to feed the growing population. It became necessary to be attentive to reaping a better harvest and protecting it. One way of doing this was the use of pesticides, which was scientifically advanced.
Pesticides. Pesticides in agriculture. Integrated pest management. Problems with pesticides. Preventing accidents.
A pest can be an animal, usually an insect, or a plant or weed, having characteristics which people regard as injurious or unwanted. This is most often because they cause damage to agriculture through feeding on crops or being parasites on livestock. An animal can also be a pest when it causes damage to a wild ecosystem or carries germs within human habitats. A chemical or a mixture of chemicals used to combat such a situation is called a pesticide. Pesticides can be divided into three groups: fungicides, weedicides, and insecticides.
We all know the word pesticides, but the word we're probably more familiar with is insecticides, because that's what's more commonly used in connection with agriculture. But there is a very distinct difference between the two.
Chemicals used to eliminate insects are called pesticides. Pesticides can be used to get rid of plants, fungus, and other life forms too. Insecticides are a part of pesticides.
Well, Narada's about to find out a little more about the role of pesticides in agriculture. So let's go join him.
මේක සාමාන්‍ය කොහොමද කොච්චරක් කලින් යොදන්න ඕනද ඒවා ගැන
මේක දැන් අපි නම් මේ යාය පහුවෙලා දැන් තියෙන්නේ ඒකයි මේ මේ විදිහට මේ අනිද්දර වපුරන විදිහට මේ දාන්නේ.
දැන් ඔය දානකොට ඔය බෝතලේ තියෙන විදිහ බලලා ඒ ප්‍රමාණයම දාන ඊට වැඩියෙන් දානවද?
නෑ නෑ ඊට වැඩිය චුට්ටක් වැඩිපුර දාන්න ඕනේ. නැත්නම් අපිට මේ ප්‍රයෝජනක් ගන්න බෑ.
චුට්ටක් වැඩිපුර දානවා.
මේකත් කියලා තියෙන්නේ ලීටරයට මිලිලීටර් 20ක් ලීටර් දෙකක මෙයා කරන්න කියලා. කලවම් කරන්න කියලා. ඒ වුණාට අපි ඊට වැඩිය පොඩ්ඩක් දාන්න අපි.
පොඩ්ඩක් දානවා.
ඔව් නැත්නම් ප්‍රයෝජනක් ගන්න බෑ අපිට.
සාමාන්‍යයෙන් කොයි වෙලාවටද ඔයගොල්ලන් මේ යොදන්නේ මේ දවල් වරුද යොදන්නේ කියලා තියෙනවා?
ඔව් තද වෙලාවට තමයි දාන්නේ කියලා තියෙන්නේ.
Irrespective of how we feel about pesticides, they are necessity in meeting the needs of farmers to help them protect crops and meet the growing demand for food.
Pesticides are an important factor in agriculture. They protect crops from harmful insects, weeds and fungi while helping farmers yield a better harvest. A farmer that doesn't use pesticides runs the risk of losing about 40% of his potential harvest. Therefore, pesticides have become an important factor in meeting the demand for food.
Protecting the harvest after it is reaped. Smoking can be used to protect stored grain such as rice and green gram from rats, termites and other insects. Due to the high level of toxins involved, this method must only be administered by professionals and certified persons.
Although we tend to associate pesticides with agriculture, they have also become very much a part of our everyday lives. So let's take a look at just how much a part of our lives they have become.
Today, pesticides have gone beyond agriculture to become a consumer product. There are many instances in day-to-day life where we use pesticides. For example, to get rid of fungi, in the production of paint, in swimming pools, on livestock farms, on pets, mosquito coils, in butter and margarine wrappers, in fruits and vegetables. All the chemicals used in these various instances are pesticides. The effect of pesticides on humans depends on the quantity of pesticides consumed. If the food we eat contains excessive amounts of pesticides, the consequences will definitely be harmful. This is because our digestive system cannot break down high levels of toxins during the digestive process.
In the good old days, pest control was carried out without the use of pesticides and other chemicals. And even today it is best if they are not used at all or if their use is kept to a minimum. Well, today there is a new concept that's known as integrated pest management, and we're going to learn a little more about it.
In a simpler sense, the use of alternative methods to control pests that are harmful to crops is called integrated pest management. In the traditional agricultural age, crops were cultivated with the sole intention of providing a day's meal. This helped forge a close connection between people and nature. People managed to increase productivity of crops through soil conservation, integrated pest management through the use of animals and plants, and cultivation according to the seasons. Today, many countries the world over have stopped using chemical pesticides and have given priority to cultivation by integrated pest management. It is important to pay attention to using scientifically advanced integrated pest management methods in cultivation because there is a need for a toxin-free meal. There is also now a need for action at the national level regarding this.
අපි දැන් කෘෂිකර්ම දෙපාර්තමේන්තුවේ කරන ගොඩාක් ව්‍යාපෘති නැත්නම් අපේ දැනුවත් කිරීමවලදී අපි දැන්
In many projects that we carry out now at the Agriculture Department, we use integrated pest management rather than pesticides. We try to control pests in a natural way using quicker mechanical methods. We only resort to the use of pesticides or chemicals when it is impossible to control the situation using natural methods.
අපහසු අවස්ථාවක් ඒ වගේ අවස්ථාවල විතරක් තමයි පලිබෝධනාශක භාවිතය නැත්නම් රසායනික භාවිතයට අපි යොමු කරන්නේ.
There's hardly any professionalism in the use of pesticides here in Sri Lanka. In Western countries, for example, pest control is taken on as an independent profession. Here, however, it is something that's done alongside another profession. But how important exactly is professionalism in the use of pesticides? Should it be taken on as a separate job? And what's the significance of this? Let's find out answers to these questions.
මේකම වෘත්තීය තත්වයකට එනවා කියලා කියන්නේ එහි හොඳ පාලනයක් හොඳ
Reaching a professional level in anything requires good management and administrative control. In Sri Lanka, just because the term professional is used, it doesn't necessarily mean that there is a degree of professionalism. For example, there are people in the villages whose job is pest control, but these people don't really have any professional knowledge on the subject. What they do is, they just put the pesticides into the tank and spray it. This cannot be considered as professional because it is done without any real knowledge. There are companies which produce and distribute pesticides. There are also companies which offer pest control services, so there are degrees of professionalism in this business.
පලිබෝධනාශක සමාජය තුළ එක එක මට්ටම් වලින් ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙනවා දැනට.
There are two basic regulations that govern pesticide use in Sri Lanka: the Rotterdam Accord and the Stockholm Accord. According to the Rotterdam Accord, a pesticide banned or under strict control in one country cannot be imported by another country without written permission from officials in the importing country.
There were suspicions some time ago that pesticides coming into Sri Lanka were those that were banned in other countries. The Rotterdam Accord serves to prevent incidents like this. According to the Stockholm Accord, the production and use of 12 types of chemicals are banned the world over. Of the 12, 8 are pesticides, 2 are industrial chemicals, another 2 are produced as toxic waste. This includes pesticides which come under the category of hydrocarbons like DDT. The UN Food and Agriculture Organization has an international precept called the Code of Conduct. This is a set of rules and guidelines governing the production and distribution of pesticides. The code also includes the government's role in pesticide control.
Knowing right from wrong doesn't always mean that we make the right choice every single time. And the same goes for farmers when it comes to the use of pesticides. But let's find out how pesticides should be properly used and what should be avoided when doing so.
Things to avoid when using pesticides. Avoid using or spraying pesticides in times of intense heat, such as midday or noon. Do not use continually for more than 2 to 3 hours. Avoid spraying pesticides when the direction of the wind is towards the person spraying it. Do not use several different pesticides simultaneously. Do not blow into the nozzle if it gets stuck while spraying pesticides. Avoid smoking, eating and drinking when spraying or mixing pesticides. Avoid washing face or hands with the water in the field after spraying pesticides. Do not dispose of empty containers or leftover chemicals in waterways. Avoid using pesticides completely if you have any wounds or injuries. The correct use of pesticides. Use pesticides only during mornings or evenings. Make sure that the face is covered well before application. Wear rubber gloves and boots when spraying pesticides. Wear a long-sleeved shirt, trousers and a hat when using pesticides. After spraying, wash the tank well and empty into the field which has just been sprayed. Wash clothes and body well with soap after use. Follow the instructions given on the label.
There are times when we are compelled to use pesticides. But what often happens is that people just use however much pesticide they think is necessary. And that's a very big mistake. There are very clear instructions on how the pesticide should be used and how much should be used. And these are always included on the packaging. And they should be read very carefully and followed.
In the Sri Lankan context, all pesticides have to be registered before they can be distributed and sold. In the registration process, the label on the bottle of pesticide plays an important role. Companies which produce pesticides are given instructions on what information should be included on the label, how the label should be presented, and how it should be displayed. The label should include information like how poisonous it is, what it is intended for, instructions for use, instructions for protection during use, instructions in instances of emergency, and action that should be taken by the doctor. It is necessary that the instructions given on the label are followed. If not, the consequences could be serious or even fatal.
Problems with pesticides. Social issues. Suicide has become a very big social issue today. The first harvest usually contains a lot of pesticides, causing serious health problems. Environmental issues. Harmful effects on animals and pollution due to the misuse of pesticides. Domestic and other accidents can be kept to a minimum if pesticides are used as instructed, kept out of the reach of children, and if bottles and containers are disposed of in a safe manner.
Because we come into contact with pesticides so often in our everyday lives, no matter how careful we may be, there is always the danger that somebody may end up ingesting it. So let's find out what we should do in such cases of emergency.
If pesticides come into contact with skin or enter the body through the skin, the area should be washed immediately with soap. If unusual perspiration, red eyes, tearing, respiratory problems, vomiting, cramps or headaches occur, a doctor should be consulted immediately. When meeting the doctor, the bottle of pesticide should be taken. It is important to tell the doctor the accurate series of incidents. Actions to be taken in the event that pesticides are swallowed with suicidal intent. Act according to instructions given on the label. If it is mentioned on the label that vomiting is advisable and if the patient is lucid, then immediately induce vomiting. Do not give the patient water or any salt solutions. Get medical assistance as soon as possible. Those who use pesticides regularly should see a doctor at least once a month.
Well, the bottom line is, don't use pesticides unless you really have to. And if you really have to, then read the instructions very carefully and follow them. Well, we hope today's program gave you a better idea of what pesticides are and how best they should be used. Do join us again next time for another episode of Mihi Madala, brought to you in collaboration with the National Science Foundation. Till then, you take care of yourselves.
Presented by the National Science Foundation of Sri Lanka.